Hello, this is Public Advocate, and I'm Shirley Graves. This month we have a wonderful guest who's going to tell us all about Marinship. Eric Torney, to my right here, is a historian, a movie producer, and an author, and he has worked mostly on trying to talk about Marinship, and we're going to talk with him. I will say a few personal things about him. He's a fourth-generation California native. His grandfather arrived in San Francisco in 1851, and he has gone to all the local schools where several of us have probably gone: Kent School, Redwood High, College of Marin, and he is a Marin resident. He's going to talk to us about his work on the historic details that have to do with Marinship. He's done a movie, a book, and he started doing this because he found some interesting historic things about Marinship. So I'm going to just talk to Mr. Torney about his work and about Marinship. And Mr. Torney, Eric Torney.
Thank you for inviting me, Shirley. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So what
can I tell you?
Start out telling us about Marinship. We all know where Marinship's in Sausalito, and I'm probably very familiar with it because, as I've said, my father was asked to come to California to Marinship from Joliet, Illinois, because he was a accountant, and Stone and Webster, one of the companies that was working at Marinship, needed an accountant, and somehow he got recommended to them. He got a letter from them. He says, "Hey, we're going to California." So here I am, and here you are, and so we're going to hear about Marinship. You've done a movie, a book, and all kinds of things on Marinship.
Yes, several exhibits.
Yes, so we'd like to hear about about you. You've lived in Marin most of your life and gone to Marin.
Yes, I moved to Marin with my family. We actually lived in Muir Woods for a few months while my father was building a house on Woodbine Drive in Mill Valley. And so we stayed in that little cabin for a while and then lived there. And we would go to San Francisco to my grandmother's house in Pacific Heights, and I'd see this shipyard down, looking down off towards the water, and I'd ask my dad, "What was that?" And he said, "Oh, it was just a shipyard." He was a B-24 pilot, so he didn't care too much for ships.
Ships, no.
So it really didn't make much difference to him. But I always was curious. And eventually I became associated with a lovely lady from Sausalito, and Lori Flynn. She's over there in the audience watching us. And I started researching the shipyard. There was a movie I was going to do, and part of the movie was called Sausalito After the Bridge.
Uh-huh.
And all the things that changed Sausalito after the bridge was built. And the shipyard was one of the most significant changes in Sausalito. So I started hanging out at the Sausalito Historical Society and found a lot of nice stuff, like this picture here. Oh. And I've got about 1,000 pictures from their collection.
This was a picture from
yeah, this is a picture looking down at the shipyard. It's up on the hills, pretty much above Spencer Avenue in Sausalito, looking out.
Sausalito, looking down on Marinship.
This is a Strawberry Point here.
Ah.
And those are the Tiburon Hills over there.
Oh, what a picture.
Right. And like this little point right here is where Bridgeway today comes in and splits for Gate 5 Road. And Bridgeway follows around and goes downtown into Sausalito.
Oh my.
So this is one of my favorite pictures. It's showing we've got the shipways right here where they built 6 shipways where they would build 6 ships at a time.
Where was this taken? Up in the hills somewhere?
Yeah, this is looking northeast from the hills right near the top of Waldo Grade.
Oh my goodness.
If you were to go up Rodeo Avenue and walk a little bit on the dirt roads up there, you'd end up on this spot here.
Oh my.
I've been there. I've hiked, so I've
well,
gone to that spot.
it's a beautiful picture. It's just lovely.
And some of the features we see here. There's another picture that I can show you that is looking. This is an aerial picture showing the shipyard.
Oh, my.
So you were telling me you were living in Marin City for a while.
When it was first built, yes.
So this
yes,
up here
and,
is Marin City.
When my father was hired to come here, they gave us, my parents a room and me a room up in Marin City. Lovely place.
At that time, speaking of Marin City, there was actually 2 locations that were considered to be Marin City at that time, as the border of Sausalito at that point was right about here, right at Nevada Street today. So that was the city limits. So you were actually outside, but this Martin Luther King School, is that right, sweetie?
Bayside, Martin Luther King.
That's up Nevada Street? That's the one that's up Nevada Street. But there were single person barracks up there. The single men and the single women lived in those buildings as dormitories. They had a cafeteria.
They put us there up for a couple of weeks while we were supposed to be looking for a apartment or a room or something in the rest of Marin County.
Sure, that must have been the place then. They had
Big
cafeteria, they had recreation
Yeah.
hall, and it wasn't a bad place to be if you were single.
We found so many people, they found they could rent rooms in those days. And there were several older ladies on Mission Avenue that had big homes, and instead of selling them and moving or something, they just decided to rent rooms.
You know, housing was a really
We rented
real
a room
problem.
there, and after a few weeks we left the Marin City buildings, and where they didn't want us to stay forever, and we found a rooming house run by a lady on Mission Avenue. So we went there.
Well, I wasn't here then. I came after the war. So
This was about
And
1946.
my father was flying a bomber about that time in,
Oh, my
in England.
goodness.
My mother was in the Red Cross, and that's where they met. And we actually went there last year, or no, year before. We went to England and my mother was in the Red Cross and was managing a entertainment club for the enlisted men. And my father liked to hang out with his crew, and he'd go in, and that's where they met. And of the entire base of about 3,000 or 4,000 people, they're the only 2 people who married. And they actually got married on the base. We went to the church. And the most amazing thing is they have a little museum there, and we were in the museum, is looking at the stuff that they have for this. It was the 446th Bomber Group. And
Where is this?
this is in Flixton in England. It's
England.
to the north and to the east of London, maybe 50 miles. And so as I was leaving, I had some pictures, and I started talking to the man in the gift shop. And he says, "Oh, can you hold on a second?" And so he calls this man up, and he says, "You got to come here right now." He says, "Well, I can't, but maybe 1 o'clock." So we went off and had lunch and came back, and this man, he comes up to me and he says, Irma, right?" I said, "No, my mother was Erna." He was at the wedding. Just absolutely amazing.
Oh, it's amazing people who you meet.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. That was amazing. Now let's see. You had some questions here that would be fairly interesting. What was Marinship? What was it first built to be?
Sure, Marinship was built as an emergency shipyard. Was it right after the United States got into the war? This is a site plan of the shipyard. This is another overview. I'm flipping ahead here so right after Pearl Harbor, there was a huge need for shipping because I'm going to get to that slide. The Japanese and the German were sinking cargo ships so effectively. They were getting really good at it. Like in January, they sank 17 ships. This is January of 1942, right after Pearl Harbor. 36 in February, 60 in March, 68 in April. They're getting pretty good at it.
We had that many, huh?
Right. Well, there was 2,000 cargo ships left over from World War I, and they were using them. But they wouldn't have lasted too long at that. So Maritime Commission sent a telegram to 6 contractors. They were called the 6 companies, and they wanted 6 shipyards built immediately.
All over the United States.
Right, the Bechtel Corporation, the W.A. Bechtel at the time, which today is the Bechtel Corporation, was sent this a telegram. The telegram does not exist, but this is the text of the telegram. And the highlighted part there reads, "The emergency demands all within your power to give your country ships." So the day that that telegram was received by the Bechtel Company, Ken Bechtel, the younger of 2 brothers operating the company, W.A. Bechtel himself had died in Siberia a few years before. So the 2 sons were running the company. He started looking around because the telegram asks for a shipyard on the West Coast somewhere. So he started looking around where they could build a shipyard. And most of the sites were already occupied by shipyards. Like Kaiser had a contract with the British government to build 60 ships in 1941. And he built the Richmond Shipyard #1. There was 4 Kaiser shipyards in Richmond, all in the same place where the Rosie Museum is today. So he built that shipyard to get started. And then this came along in March of 1942, the 2nd of March, this telegram came out. And on the 2nd of March, Ken Bechtel scouted possible locations, but they were either occupied by shipyards or there wasn't enough labor. So he made an appointment with some friends that he had in Marin County. That night, he went over. In the morning of the 3rd of March, they looked around and they found the site for the shipyard. That's Ken Bechtel, a very nice young man. He was very involved with civic organizations. He was a commissioner of the Boy Scouts, a very philanthropic man. At any rate, he picked the site in Sausalito because it had vacant land. You can see there's nothing there.
Yeah, I was wondering why they picked Sausalito instead of a...
It has a rail line,
Middle of the-
which is important
Yeah.
for a shipyard to have supplies. And there was also a rail maintenance yard where they could build a shipyard. So vacant land, a railroad, and a deep water channel. I'll go back to some of these because they're really interesting.
That's Sausalito.
This is right. This is all in Sausalito. So right here, this picture, today this is Bridgeway running down here. And Gate 5 Road takes off right here and goes out into what is today the shipyard. And if people are familiar with Sausalito, this part right here is the dog park.
Oh. Well, that's important too.
So because it was vacant and available, that's where they built the shipyard.
Oh, dear.
And it had to be done very quickly. Please give us ships as quickly as you possibly can. So here we are on the 3rd of March. He sees this site. He calls up the Maritime Commission, and they say, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Make us a proposal.
Bechtel.
Ken Bechtel. So he goes back to his office, he sharpens his pencil, and takes him about a week to come up with a proposal. He flies to Washington, D.C., and has a meeting with the admirals of the Maritime Commission.
Oh.
10 minutes into the presentation, they said, build it.
Built it. Oh, my goodness.
So without a contract, he calls up his brother, Steve, at the San Francisco office. Steve gets started drawing plans and gets things moving. Tries to find surveyors and just gets things organized. So a week later, they're getting started after they get asked. So they needed to move very quickly. There's a hill right here. That's Pine Point. There were 42 houses on that hill. This is another view of Pine Point. We're out on the railroad causeway looking south. This part over here is what is downtown Sausalito today. Off this side is where the Whiskey Springs condominium complex and the Molly Stone Market is.
Oh my.
And this
Well,
is
wonderful pictures, though.
from Pine Point, looking, yeah, they're iconic, absolutely incredible pictures. These pictures came from a booklet that were put together for VIPs. If you were to come and watch the ship, or if you were a visitor, they would put together a booklet for you with some 25 or 30 pictures in it. And this is one of those pictures from one of those books. You may also have heard about the American Distilling Company. There was a distillery in Sausalito. That's what this is right here. That's the American Distillery Company, where today's Whiskey Springs condominium complex is.
Now this is Marinship.
This is all on the site of Marinship, where the distillery was off the site. But we're looking at what site, where the shipyard was built. These pictures are made just days before construction began on the 28th of March. I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's the rail maintenance yard looking south. There's downtown Sausalito in here. Spring Street comes down right about in here now, where the shortstop market is. And here we're looking north at Pine Point. And if you look closely, you can see some houses up there. So this is again up in the hills looking down on the site before they build the shipyard. This is the rail maintenance yard in here. It's called Pine Point. And this is Pine Point with 42 houses on it. So they had to ask these people to leave so they could build the shipyard. So they asked the people, can you leave in 2 weeks? And can you take your house with you? And some of them actually did. The Gelati Construction Company was available, and they moved maybe a dozen of the 42 houses onto Spring Street, which is this one right here. And today you can go there, and if you know what you're looking for, you can see some of these houses.
Oh my goodness.
And I actually spoke with a man who was born in one of them and still lives in it. It was one of the houses that was on Pine Point that got moved.
Do you give tours at all?
I will give tours,
Guided
yes.
tours?
Yeah, I can be convinced. You have to take me to lunch.
Oh, well.
But that's about it. And so this is Pine Point again. We're looking a little more northerly from the hill above the short stop on Bridgeway. So they blew the hill up and dynamited it and bulldozed it down to be flat and used the dirt for fill. This is called Earth Moving Day.
Earth Moving Day.
You can see that the hill was right in here, and I can see here, I don't know if you can, that's a earth mover hauling dirt to fill in all that land. If you remember that earlier picture, there was a train track, and that was right about there. And so they've filled in 210 acres. It's a 1 mile long site that has all this stuff on it.
Oh, that's long though, 1 mile.
Right.
Thinking of Marinship down there,
Today there's the 3030 Bridgeway building right there. That's probably where your father was working, in the administration building. And that was built in 90 days. They needed had to have an office. So let's go back. So 2nd of March, all of a sudden they're building a shipyard. Where are they going to, they got to have telephones, they got to have office workers and desks. There was nothing, there was no space. Downtown Sausalito had a vacant garage because the Golden Gate Bridge had shut down the ferry operation. And there was a Mason's parking garage in downtown Sausalito, which today the Poggio restaurant is in, and the Casa Madrona Hotel occupies that. So it was vacant. I mean, they weren't parking cars there, so they moved into the top floor and put in some telephones and desks. And for the first few months, before they could build the administration building, that was their office.
Oh my goodness. They just did all this from scratch.
Right, there was nothing. They needed telephones, which is an interesting subject. And so out in the middle of this muddy field here, they put a little telephone building
Of course.
that they then built the industrial center building around. And today you can, I don't know exactly where in the building, but there's a book that tells that story about how that all happened. So they madly proceeded to drive piles. There's some 29,000 piles that they drove down. We're looking here to the north. This is Waldo Point here, and you've got the iconic Mount Tamalpais in the background. These boards, these planks, or whatever they are in the foreground, are the beginnings of shipway number 6, where they launched the first ship.
Oh.
So they're just bringing as many laborers as they possibly can in and building this as fast as they possibly
And
could.
how long did it take them to actually start turning out ships?
Well, they started construction on the 28th of March, which is, what, 3 weeks after they get asked?
In 42.
Right. Then 3 months later, they have enough of a shipyard together to lay the keel for a ship.
Oh, okay.
We're getting a little ahead of my pictures
Oh.
here, but you can see things coming along here. Here we've got Bridgeway going down.
Oh, yes.
They've knocked down Pine Point. This is the 3030 administration building, which is used as an office building today. This is the beginnings of the industrial center building that we see have the artists in Sausalito in today. Then it was called the mold loft and yard office. Your father may have been in that one too. It's one of these two that he would have been in. And actually, he may have been in the other one, but more likely the administration building.
He was near the highway, if I recall, because I've only there 2 or 3 times for some reason or other, and it was like the Marin City was up here, the buildings that he's using, and then the highway this way, and then the Marinship buildings down there, and he was fairly near the highway at that point.
That must have been the administration building.
Big stucco building that had a lot of the offices in.
Yeah.
It wasn't just his office; it was a lot of the companies that were working there.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a 2-story building used as offices today. They're kind of small spaces if you go in, but the industrial center building, the mold loft and yard office, had a whole lot of room in it. It was 3 floors.
Oh.
The upper level was wide open space, was completely clear of columns. It was just floor and roof with windows all around. And they would build full-scale, full-size templates to cut out the steel plates for the ship on the top floor.
Oh my goodness.
Then the other 2 floors were, there was drafting rooms and blueprint machines, and there's actually 3 concrete safes where they kept plans in case there was a fire.
Yeah.
You can see those safes today. There was a combination lock instead of a doorknob in the hallway.
Oh, really?
And
In this building that you can go into?
right, the industrial center building.
Oh my goodness.
But they're building it here. This is where the steel plates were stored in this area. There's a beginnings of the shop where they would cut the steel plates up into shapes and bend them, and then they would move them down. This is on the very south end of the shipyard. It's the very south border. It's kind of right near Galilee Harbor, where this is Bridgeway up here coming along. But this is where the pipe shop was. And today it's an office building. It's got the dance studios in it, and artists' offices. It's the southernmost building. There's a machinery storage and pipe shop.
So it says that one of the questions that had been asked was, what was it like to have worked there, and where did the workers live? Would you just say they lived in those dormitory things?
Right. I mentioned that there's some pictures of the
Oh,
that you're getting a little ahead of me there. So
gee, is my father in there?
no, these are the 5. It's a very famous picture.
Huh?
You've got Steve Bechtel here,
Oh,
and the next guy, I can't always remember his name. It's Ray Hamilton. Ray Hamilton here. He was the construction manager. You've got Carl Flesher. He was with the Maritime Commission. He was overseeing all this.
oh my.
This is Ken Bechtel.
Oh, Mr.
Right
Bechtel,
here.
building it, yeah.
And at the very end here, you've got Warren Waste, or William Waste.
West,
Waste. William Waste.
Waste.
He was a Marinship employee who was an administrator, and they had him. The Bechtel Corporation started building ships in 1941, like Kaiser did, but they had a shipyard in Los Angeles, in Terminal Island, where they had Cal Ship. And so when Marinship came along, they brought him up from Cal Ship to manage the Marinship. But this picture right here, the occasion is the laying of the keel for the William A. Richardson, the first ship,
Oh
which is
my.
90 days after they started construction.
That's pretty good.
90 days.
It was a big ship, I guess.
Yeah, it was a Liberty ship.
Oh my.
And this picture here is a panorama that was pointed out to me when I was collecting pictures. One of the docents found it, and it was folded over. Oops. Come on. I could only see this part of it right here.
Oh.
Didn't know what it was. So when I finally came back to scan it and pulled it out of its plastic sleeve, I realized it's a panorama.
Ah.
And what is this panorama showing? This is showing the keel for the William A. Richardson. This is the keel that they had just laid probably the day before.
Oh.
So you can see the condition of the shipyard. There's hardly anything there. There's no shipway. There's just some
They're working.
planks.
They're working on it.
But
huh?
they're moving right along. And
Yeah.
this over here is shipway number 5. They're moving it along. They're going to start the William A. Coleman in a couple of weeks. This is another picture showing the William A. Richardson about a week later. This is 11th of July. So the 28th of March to the 11th of July, what's that, 13 days? 2 weeks, they built that much of a ship. So how did they do that? How did they build a ship when they had nothing there to build it with? Well, they had the Cal Ship, as I mentioned it, the Cal Ship shipyard in Southern California. So they would build as big a piece as they could of a ship and put it on a rail car and ship it out.
Oh.
Those were called little subassemblies.
Oh.
And that was the process that they used. They developed an assembly process similar to Henry Ford's assembly line to build ships. Henry Kaiser was a genius industrialist, and he adapted that for shipbuilding.
Of course, you can run a car down an assembly line and work on it, but you can't run a ship down. I mean.
Right. So that's the adaptation.
Yeah.
They assemble it. They assembled pieces of ships.
Yeah.
But to build the first ship in Marinship, where there was nothing to build these parts, they brought them up on rail cars and they stacked them. These are sub-assemblies in here, all stacked up. There's a rail line right in here. There's another rail line in here. You can't see it too well, but they bring these pieces up and lift them off with mobile cranes and stack them in the sub-assembly storage area.
Well, why, if they had what would you call it, a shipbuilding process already in Los Angeles, why did they start up here also? Was it they needed so many ships?
They needed more.
Or?
They needed more. You see, Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1936 had foreseen a problem. before. I mean, he saw the problems happening in Europe with Hitler and the aggressions over there, and he knew something was going to happen. And the Americans had really gotten lazy. They devastated the shipbuilding industry, because during World War I, you've heard of the war daddies, and there were many people who took advantage of the government with their contracts, and so they kind of got a bad reputation for taking advantage of the situation. So most of them just got shut down after the war. So the shipbuilding had declined to almost none. And they also had such a surplus of ships. But Franklin decided this is not good. So he instigated the U.S. Maritime Commission in 1936 to build 1 million tons of shipping in 10 years. So little did he know that in a few years that this was going to happen with Pearl Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
So it was immediately, Day of Pearl Harbor was doubled to 2 million tons. And so all the shipyards, the million tons that he had ordered started to waken these shipyards up. They were starting to get moving. They were getting workers back and getting their steel mills burning and whatever they needed to do to make ships. But with Pearl Harbor, they immediately doubled it.
Yes.
And all of those existing shipyards just couldn't keep up. So then he ended up quadrupling it when he saw that chart with all the ships being sunk. And that's when the 6 emergency shipyards, Marinship being one of them, were built. There was another one in Rhode Island, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. So that's how they did it. They brought these pieces up and stacked them. And so the basic process is they stack these pieces of a ship up in order, ready to go onto the shipyard. They move it on a piece of a ship. I'll show you pictures of subassemblies later, and start adding them to the keel.
My goodness.
So it was a very efficient, very quick way of building a ship.
Yeah, because the ships they're talking about were huge.
Right.
You couldn't just sit there with a hammer and...
No. They had, they had to build scaffolds so that people wouldn't fall off when they're working on the outside and all this. Also, you can see here there's a bunch of cars. So this is before there was any commuting facilities. People had to get to work somehow. It was really difficult. And they carpooled as much as they could. And we'll talk about that later.
They didn't have buses, huh?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There's pictures of buses. So here we are, 6 months after they started construction. You are launching the William A. Richardson.
Wow.
That's why I call it the world's most amazing shipyard. From a mud flat to launching a ship in 6 months.
Oh.
It was like 20,000 people came to this event.
Oh, you look at all the people. Must have been very exciting for them at the time.
Oh, it was unbelievable. There's a movie, it's called Tanker 1945, that tells this story.
Oh.
But it tells it from a perspective of a worker who worked in Marinship. So they think nothing. Oh yeah, we just built the ship in 6 months.
Just built the ship.
Yeah, we just did it. So from us today, we're just can't hardly believe that they did that. But this movie called Tanker was put together by shipyard workers. One of the administrators wrote the script. It was actually filmed in San Anselmo. And you can see that online today. You will go to the Internet Archive, that's archive.org. And in the search box, you will type in Marinship.
Really?
And bingo, there's a whole bunch of oral interviews of workers that the Sausalito Historical Society had. That was made for the 50th anniversary of the shipyard.
Now you go to the internet and you type in
archive.org.
archive.org.
That's the website.
Website.
And when you're in that website, there's a search box up in the upper right corner. You type in Marinship.
Okay.
And then you get the stuff, and the movie Tanker is one of them. That movie is owned by the California Historical Society.
Of course, yeah.
And there was a program that was called California Revealed, or no, California Light and Sound at the time, where the California government, I guess it is, some far-sighted people were realizing that much of this audio and visual material is deteriorating. So they send out requests to historical societies. Do you have anything that you think is worthy of preserving?
Oh.
And the California Historical Society was one of the first to take advantage of this. And this movie was one of the first things they did. And I discovered it when I was doing my research for Sausalito After the Bridge. And I was just amazed that this movie was up there. But you can see it today. It's called Tanker. And also with all the Tanker, you'll see a whole bunch of oral interviews of shipyard workers. There were some 45 or 50 interviews that were done all on cassette tapes. And I found them in a box in the Marinship archive and took advantage of the California Light and Sound, and it took them a year, but they transferred everything from cassette tapes to and posted it online, and those interviews are right there at the same place on the Internet Archive. You can listen to.
You go to archives.
Archive.org.
And
type in Marinship, and you get this whole resource of there's 5 or 6 video interviews. They're badly deteriorated magnetic tape, but you can still hear these people talking and see the ranger with the microphone asking questions. And then you've got many, many more audio tape interviews on cassettes. Shipyard workers, painters, welders, accountants. There's a lady, Daisy Hollingsworth, who was the woman who was hired to manage each ship launch. And she has a wonderful interview there telling about how that picture I showed you with the 5 men, she had to get them lunch one day. So she was going to go over to the cafeteria, which is right across the street from the office where they worked. They wanted better food, so she goes up to the Buckeye and gets lunch for the men there.
Oh my.
She's got great stories like that. But she would be the one who would contact the person who was the sponsor. She would get the bottle of champagne, give it to the sponsor, and be there when they broke it on the bow of the ship.
Oh my.
So she would,
what a job.
she would explain how the ship would be launched, whether the sponsor was there or not, when the ship was ready. So she would always bring the sponsor in early for coffee in the office. So she'd get her there and then take her over to the platform where they launched the ship and have her there when the ship is ready to launch.
Oh, well, she had a great job.
Yeah, well, there's some of those interviews are absolutely fantastic.
Oh my.
So at any rate, they launched the ship, and here we are. This is what the shipyard looked like when they launched it. It's moving right along very quickly. Here's 2 pictures that compare. 1 year difference. This is 9th of July up here on the top. You can see the William A. Richardson is moving along. It's 6 weeks old, thereabout. Here's a year later, the same view.
Oh my goodness.
1
They
year.
were busy.
They've got the scaffolds built up around the ships so they can paint the outside and weld. And
Those are all built around ships that
Yes.
they're working on.
each one of those.
Oh my.
You've got sub-assemblies out here that they moved in. There's a crane, one of these big whirly cranes on each side of a shipway. And they'd pick these pieces up and move them out. So how did they do that? How did they manage to get from nothing to a shipyard with 20,000 people working?
Oh.
So
They put them all.
they bring up trained people from CalShip who know what they're doing.
That's from Los Angeles.
Right. And they bring in other people from all over the country, Illinois, whatever, Southern California, wherever anybody isn't working and can come and has the aptitude, not necessarily the skill. These trained people, these are managers, so they would be helping people build ships, and he's explaining how they do it, teaching these people. Same with the workers. You've got a skilled welder here. This man is a journeyman ship fitter. He not only can weld, he can do a lot of skills. But
And
here,
those are mostly women in the audience. They had many
Right,
women in the war
right.
doing factory work and things like this.
and labor was a huge problem. At first, the women were not allowed on the shipyard, and this is a picture taken later during the war, because the unions required that the men be the workers, and the women could be in the office, but not out in the shipyards.
Right.
At least at the beginning. There's a story I'll be telling you about how that happened. But, so he's training people how to weld. Just one thing. All they do is weld. He may have 8 or 10 trades he's skilled at. They teach one thing that they learn how to do very well, very efficiently.
Safety saves hours, lives, and wages.
So this is the
Whole lot.
today's industrial center building. It's the mold loft and yard office.
Yes, I was reading that.
The top floor, as I was saying, is completely open. They make templates up there. They bring them out this little door
Oh,
and down this ramp. And then I think it's hard to see, but could be some men carrying a template right there.
you can tell how old the picture is by the cars sitting out in front of it.
Yeah. The other thing I see too is when you go there today and look, this stairway is about 3 times as tall now, because the ground has settled
Oh,
at least 4 or 5 feet. That building is on piles. It hasn't settled, but all the dirt has.
and that's on Sausalito.
Right. This is Harbor Drive,
Harbor
going right
Drive.
in front of this. Molly Stone Market is over here.
Oh my.
And you've got a rail car with some sub-assemblies on it.
Oh, imagine living down there and driving by this every day. This is
Yeah, you can hear noise and smell smoke of welders' smoke, and there's all kinds of activity going on.
right.
So we have a shipway here. You've got a crane on each side of a ship that will come and pick up a sub-assembly, which is a bunch of pieces of a ship that they've built. What the sub-assembly process accomplishes is allows many workers to be working on a space, because the shipyard is a very congested space. There's not much room. So they can spread all these things out all over the yard. They can build a bow section. They can build the
Goodness.
all the other parts, the galley for the ship, the bulkheads, the ship plates, the deck plates, the gun turrets. All those things can get built somewhere else, and they stack them up, ready to go on the ship in front. And so they can assemble the ship very quickly. The Marinship shipyard holds the world record for building a tanker in the shortest amount of time.
Oh,
It was 28 days on the shipway and 5 days in the outfitting docks. And that compares to, there was 3 other shipyards comparable. I think the next closest one was 60 days
oh
to
my
build the ship.
goodness.
And it goes up to like 120 days for the fourth shortest. That record stands today. Nobody's ever built a tanker shorter in less than 33 days. 28 days on the shipway and 5 days outfitting. So how a ship was built was they built them on the shipways, they launched them, And I wish I could get back to that. Well, here is a subassembly being put on. This is a four-peak section. Here's a big crane, and over here is a subassembly. So the way that works is the advantage, if you're building on a ship, the piece goes in a certain position, and you may have to weld up or down or sideways, or what. Down is the easiest, and vertical is the next most difficult, but overhead is very difficult.
I would think
very
so.
time consuming. So with a subassembly, they can position it so all the welding is done either down or vertical. So this crane, there's a cable attached to this piece, and it's going to be turning it over or lifting it, changing its position, so they can build the subassembly more efficiently.
Now, we've got probably a little more than 5 minutes left, and is there any way that people can acquire this book if they want to learn more about the work?
Yes, the book is made from my movie. They actually made the movie first and then the book.
Oh, well, of course.
And then after I had all these pictures put together, the Arcadia Publishing Company sent out invitations to historical societies. Do you have any ideas? So I made a proposal, sent them in 20 pictures, and they said, oh yeah, make us a book.
Oh, okay.
So I did, and it's available locally in bookstores. The Book Passage in Sausalito has it.
Okay.
Molly Stone Market has it.
It's titled Images of America,
Well,
Marinship.
that's this Arcadia series, Images of America, and Marinship is the title of the book.
Yes. Well, it's just lovely. The pictures are fantastic.
So let's flip through here. So you've got the largest subassembly that has to go on a ship. It's being held by 4 cranes.
Oh.
They pick 2 of them up, gets halfway there, it has to transfer over to the other. It's an amazing process that shows in the movie. A tanker is built. It's a much more complex ship than a Liberty ship. It's got bulkheads to keep the oil or the water or gasoline from flipping around. It's got pipes. It's like 12 miles of pipe in a tanker.
Oh, no. To do what? To carry the oil or something that
Right.
they're carrying?
And here's workers at the shipyard. You know, they came from they had this is the Admiral Land who is telling the shipyard workers that you have been such good workers. You build Liberty ships so effectively. I'm going to have you build tankers. So they had to change from building Liberty ships to tankers.
Tankers. Oh, look
Here
at
you've
them.
got
Those are the workers.
Workers coming in, checking in on their way to work. This is a work crew. You got men and women. You got some minorities in there. This is early. The Marinship hiring hall. They had to have the hiring hall off the site because of security problems. People would go in and get a police check to see if they had criminal records. And if they passed, I mean, they're pretty much guaranteed to have a job. They'd take anybody. These people are all deaf.
They're what?
They're all deaf.
Deaf.
There's a thing called a chipper, which has this machine that makes this horrible noise. It's an air chisel, chipping off slag on welds. They're all deaf. Didn't bother them. They're spelling victory in American Sign Language with their hands.
Sign language.
You've got machinists, you've got the women that came in later to do the work, the office workers, women welders. This is Vion Cochran. She's the first woman allowed on the shipyard site to work. She was in the mail room. She started delivering mail, had some horrible experiences. I wish we had more time. And you've got Joseph James, a very important person, a Negro who was an actor, a singer during the Depression and during the war. There was a program similar to the Work Progress Administration for actors and singers and entertainers. He had to learn how to weld after the war because they stopped that program. He started working at Marinship. He saw many cases of discrimination and complained, got fired. And none other than Thurgood Marshall, working with the NAACP, took up his case.
Oh.
Carried it through all the local courts up to the California Supreme Court. It took 2 years. It was a unanimous decision in his favor. Because of that decision, minorities and women had to be hired at the shipyards. The unions had no choice. It changed the workforce forever. This is how today's modern integrated workforce began at Marinship because of Joseph James.
Really?
This iconic lady welder, I wish I knew her name. She's a burner. She's got a torch. She's not a welder, actually. They had entertainment programs for half hour. There was the one woman, Dawes. She was the first female foreman of all shipyards
Oh my
in the
goodness.
country at Marinship. Not the only, but the first. These women have a very prestigious job. They're all having torches. This plate here had another half to it. That was what's holding the ship up when it was launched. So the master of ceremonies will say, burn one. Here's Dawes. Got the lady launching the ship. Here's some sponsors. Famous entertainers coming to entertain the troops.
Oh, that's
Bing Crosby.
Bing Crosby. My
An
goodness.
Arabian sheikh come. He was here for the opening ceremonies of the United Nations. He wanted to see how the ships were taking his oil around. They gave him a tour at Marinship. Here's one of those books I was telling you about. He got one. The last ship, Mission San Francisco, down the one. It was called the Marinship Ark of Triumph. There's 20,000 people here to see the launch.
Mm. That was the last one, you say? Oh. They quit then at some point, making ships there?
This is one of those plates, and so the master of ceremonies will say, burn one, so he burns this part between 1 and 3. Burn 2, so they keep going together. There's one plate on each side of the ship, and eventually the ship just breaks free after they've cut them all.
Oh my.
This is what most people don't know is at the very end, Marinship built invasion barges. They were going to invade Japan with these barges. That's an invasion barge. And here's Daisy Hollingsworth. I was telling you about her. She's the woman who would arrange for the launchings. She got to launch a barge that they named after her.
Oh.
She's using water, though. They didn't give her champagne.
Oh, and who's the man?
He's a local comic.
Yeah, I was going to say he's probably a comedian of some kind with the look on his face.
But they had to come on a bicycle built for 2, where most of the ship sponsors came in limousines.
I see. Of course.
So the tradition at Marinship was called bow art. They had special stuff painted on the bow for workers.
Oh.
Cafeteria, they had to have food. So it was a unique experience. They had the turnstiles up here. You wanted a turkey sandwich, you go in this aisle. You come in, you put your quarter in, you grab your sandwich. They give you coffee or tea or soup over here for 25 cents.
Oh, hey.
And within 5 seconds, you've got your lunch. They
I
can
could
feed
relate to
people
that,
very
25
quickly.
cents.
This is the cafeteria. It was across the street from the administration building. Today
Oh.
it's this French school by the dog park.
That's amazing.
And this is one of the cafeteria buildings. The cafeteria would make the sandwiches and the lunches and packages. They'd bring them over and distribute them. This is in front of what today is the Bay Model, where that one is. This is Marin City, where you lived for a while. We're on Waldo Grade looking to the north. You can see Mount Tamalpais in the background. That's a floor plan of one of the units. Some people on opening day looking at that. This is an inside view. So commuting was a real problem. But they eventually got a bus system going. The federal government bought buses and established a transportation system. They also had a ferry that came from San Francisco. You could learn welding on the ferry. You could pay 15 cents, and this is the bus route you've got down here. Ocean Avenue, down the south end of San Francisco. You got downtown San Francisco. You got, Stinson Beach out here. You got Santa Rosa and Sebastopol. They brought people from all around. And the ferry you can see, boom, boom.
Oh, my. Well, this has just been so interesting. And your book is available in stores here in Marin.
That's correct.
Can they contact you for it, or
Certainly.
should they contact you in any way? Do you have a phone number or a P.O. box or anything you'd like to mention, or address, or where do you take your...
I would take emails,
Oh,
E.J. Torney, Torney, at Comcast.net.
E.J. Torney,
At Comcast.net.
okay, where they...
And I'll sign your book for $20.
Well, it's undoubtedly worth it. My goodness, this is just lovely. And I mean, you could make small things in a factory, but here they're making ships. I mean,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Look at them. It's just amazing. So, Mr. Torney, I want to thank you so very much for all of your interesting reporting and the wonderful pictures that you have shared with us to have on our show.
It's been my pleasure.
So we'll certainly maybe hear from you again when you...
Sure, the reason why I'm doing this is not to make money. I don't. But it's to promote knowledge and awareness and appreciation of the shipyard.
Of
I
course.
dedicate my book to the tens of thousands of workers who dedicated their lives and efforts to the promotion of the war effort, the home
Okay.
front.
So this book is by Eric Torney, Torney, and it's about Marinship. If someone wants to go into a bookstore in Marin and inquire about it, then. Okay.
Copperfield was going to get them as
Okay.
of last week.
Aha. Well, thank you so very much.
My
And
pleasure.
We look forward to watching your show again.
Yeah.
And this is Shirley Graves, and we're saying thank you for Public Advocate, and thank you for Mr. Torney.